Today, I would like for us to look into self love and acceptance. Something that I think is very, very important. Actually, it's essential if we're going to move forward in our lives, in our recovery, and not look back and not have the same problems that we had before we entered into this program. Personally, I believe that is the ultimate solution to the problem. And I also don't believe that the problem is ever the drugs or the alcohol or the behavior, the addict behavior. In my opinion, those things are our attempt to solve a deeper problem. It's an adverse coping mechanism. It's what we're doing to try to escape or alleviate or compensate for something else that's going on within us. And in my own experience, I had to reconcile with myself in order to break free from that dark place and that negative headspace and the self destructive behavior. I realized in my own life that my childhood trauma had affected me in such a way that I was in constant pursuit of what it was that I didn't receive as a kid, which is fair, but I went about it all wrong. And so I gravitated toward the wrong kind of people, the wrong kind of behaviors, the wrong kind of activities, and it just made problems increase and made matters even worse for me. So I spent a lot of time incarcerated, been in a lot of toxic relationships, hung out with a lot of dudes that are cutthroat, psychopathic, narcissists, right? And I also kind of distorted my own self in that process. Like I became somebody that I wasn't really. It wasn't the authentic version of me. It was this mutation of a concoction of ideas that I gleaned from other people and from the environment, and I adapted, and I was like, okay, this is who I'm supposed to be. And a lot of it was born from survival mode, of just wanting to get through the day or be able to maintain some form of acceptance and recognition within that sphere of influence in that environment that I was in, whether it be on the streets or in prison and stuff like that, right? And so, if you're gonna live in the jungle, of course, I think it makes sense to be wild, like an animal, right? And you're better off being the predator than the prey, right? But outside of that context, it doesn't really make sense. In fact, it's actually counterintuitive. Let's say if we're in survival mode because we're in the jungle and we're surrounded by wolves, and so we have to be a wolf ourselves, and then we want to get back into civilization. We cannot keep that same mentality. It doesn't translate well. If you have a home, family, children, if you want to work a regular job, live a decent life, we have to break free from that mentality. It was hard for me to divorce myself from the habits that I had formed and the false identity that I had adopted. It wasn't just getting sober and not using anymore. It was like an entire overhaul that I needed to do within myself to peel away all the layers like an onion, right? And get down to the core of who I am. And because of all these added layers that I had accumulated of things that I really didn't like about myself, all the mistakes that I made, the bad choices that I made, my behaviors, my failures, I held a lot against myself. And I despised myself because that's all I could see. And what led me to enter treatment was because I did attempt suicide. I stabbed myself in the neck repeatedly, gouged open my wrist, and chewed up a bunch of pills, locked myself in a bathroom. Didn't tell anybody, just wanted to bleed out and die. Fortunately, I was rescued. I was given an opportunity to continue living. And I entered treatment. Still hopeless, feeling worthless, and had a lot of self-loathing. So this was something that was not easy for me when it comes to self-love. I had no reason to love myself. I hated myself. Not just because as a child I didn't receive love, so I didn't think that I was worthy of it, but because of the choices that I know I made as a conscious, responsible, accountable person. Even going back to my teenage years, like even when I was a teenager and I was doing stupid shit, like I knew better. And of course I had to face the consequences, and I wasn't always on the winning end of the gang violence and stuff. I've got scars. I've had broken bones. I've had bats swung on my face and busted my jaw. I've had bottles busted on my head. I've been in shootouts and stuff like that. I've been beat down by the cops, tased up a few times. I know what it's like to also suffer in that way. But I had to admit to myself that most of my troubles, past my abuse as a child, the things that I had gone through, I added those to myself. So I traumatized myself on top of already being traumatized, if you can understand what I'm saying. And also the bad decisions that I made and the way that I hurt other people and the irreversible damage that I had done. See, I have a conscience. And so I could pretend to be cold-hearted and ruthless and have no concern about it and have absolutely no compassion or empathy. But the reality, deep down inside, like I grieved over a lot of stuff. And there were many nights that I laid in a cell in prison and wept and cried and covered my face or turned towards the wall and tried to stay quiet so no one would hear me, so my cellie didn't know, because I didn't want to show that weakness. But deep down inside, like I was like, man, I'm a fucking bad person. Some really bad things. All that stuff made me not like myself. So you can imagine if a person grows up, and this is proven, scientifically proven, if a child grows up with adversities, unnecessary adversities, such as abuse, physical, sexual, emotional abuse, neglect, abandonment, even if it's emotional neglect, even if it's unintentional neglect. Let's say a parent just has to work a lot. And so it's not that they don't want to spend time with their kid, but they got to pay the bills. So they're just not there. They're not available. And the child feels ignored, feels unseen, unworthy of anyone's concern or care or affection. Those types of adversities also, if there are other family members that struggle with substance abuse in the home, it doesn't necessarily have to be from the parents. It could be other family members that can inflict these kind of damaging effects on a child. Because when we're developing, our brains are being wired and we're learning from our environment and from our experiences. And so the studies have shown that when people experience a number of adversities in their childhood, it frames their mind or their brain to operate a certain way that makes them more susceptible to addiction or risky behaviors later on in life. Now, I'm not using that as a crutch, and I'm not saying, it's all their fault, it's none of my fault. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, objectively, it is the case for the majority of people, especially with severe substance abuse disorder problems, that they share these things in common. And so that's something to consider, something to look at. Now, coupled with that, imagine a person who is already damaged, who already has maldevelopment, their brain isn't working right based on their experiences early on. Now, add the other bad experiences that accumulate because of their desperation to find connection in the best way that they can. And if they're surrounded by a bad environment, then of course it's always going to be more and more detrimental to them. So that also affects the brain. Then comes the addiction, and the addiction cycle itself hijacks the brain. And Danny talks about that. If you sit in with Danny in his classes, he constantly goes over this stuff, and this is really important because this is the neuroscience. There is measurable and predictable changes in the brain that take place when a person develops an addiction. Not even just necessarily to drugs and alcohol, but to anything. They've shown brains that, let's say, like a person who's addicted to food, a person who's addicted to heroin, and a person who's addicted to sex, right? All have the same problems. And then they show somebody who's addicted to sugar, And that person's brains seem to be a little bit more fucked up than the rest. It's crazy. So it doesn't necessarily mean just drugs and alcohol will damage your brain. It's any addiction, and it's because of the way the neural pathways form and the way we become more sensitive and unable to cope with stressors or any type of emotional dysregulation. And right away we want to get the reward or the relief or the pleasure, and so we seek whatever it was that seemed to help. Even if it's just a little while in the short term, immediately, it is effective. But what that does is it reconfigures the brain to such a degree that it will never be the same again. Once you developed an addiction, your brain's not going to go back to normal. And that's something that we all need to understand and accept. No matter how much time you get sober, or how many programs you participate in, or how much therapy you go through and all that stuff, like, you're still going to maintain the vulnerability of developing that same cycle once again. So we got to be honest with ourselves when it comes to that. I say all that because the only way that I know, that I'm confident within myself to know that I won't go back to my old self-destructive behavior and lifestyle and the addiction, is if I maintain a concern for my own well-being that is above and beyond my concern for anyone or anything else. If I prioritize myself and what's really good for me, I don't have to worry about that happening again. Because prison is not something that's just going to accidentally fall on me. Relapse is not something that I'm going to slip and trip and fall on either. These are things that are avoidable. Death by overdose and death by suicide is unnecessary. It's unnatural. It doesn't have to happen. Unfortunately, it does happen all too often. But it doesn't have to happen. And I realize that now about myself. Like, there's a lot of things. Now, I can't control everything. I can't predict the day, the hour, or how it's going to happen when it comes to when I finally depart. But there are a lot of things that I am responsible for, and I definitely don't have to seek it out for myself, right? And so that's what I'm getting at. I'm in a position now today, because I've learned to connect with myself and reconcile with that inner child, that broken little boy that was just needing something. And I thought I was going to find it from an external source, because as a kid, that's what you need. You need it from your parents. You don't have an internal self-soothing mechanism. You need external comfort. And so I was trapped in that time frame, and I wanted something outside of me to give me that. But once you get to a certain age, it's not viable anymore. That ship sailed. And many of us as adults, we're still seeking maternal love, fraternal love. And I was looking for my surrogate father with these psychopathic killers, mobsters and gangsters and guys that would just pat me on the back and give me a gun and tell me, go shoot this guy, or here, go stab this guy. And there I go. And it's like, attaboy. And for me, those are like my father figures. And that was twisted, right? That's not love. That's not how a father would raise their child that they love, their son, right? That's not good upbringing. But it was the best that I had that I could get. So I thought. In the same way, I was looking for surrogate mothers. Don't get me wrong. I didn't have a sexual fantasy about my mother, but I was involved with women that were toxic, but because they gave me love real quick, what I thought was love, I felt like that was a replacement for the nurturing that I missed out with my mom. So I was getting that female nurturing, maternal affection and love and comfort. Just a woman to love me is what I needed, right? That's what I thought. Because my mom didn't. And so it made sense to me to understand all this stuff. I don't know about you. I'm not trying to tell you your own story. You only know. But I'm sharing this with you because maybe you might have some things in common with me when it comes to that. In my recovery, I recognized that no one else is going to replace my parents. And I'm at an age now where it's not reasonable for me to expect for someone else to take care of my needs. And on any level. Not emotionally, not physically, not mentally. Like, once we're grown, right? And that helped me heal because then it just obliterated that expectation. I stopped thinking that someday I was going to find that perfect match, or someday I was going to find that perfect group of guys, my squad, and they were going to be like my brothers, and it's not going to happen. And I'm glad that I went through the experiences that I went through because it taught me a valuable lesson to not rely on other people because people will do you wrong. And also to recognize my own vulnerability and realize that the reason why I was surrounded by parasites and leeches and narcissists was because I was an easy target. Because I was a people pleaser and I was always wanting to impress others and always wanting to get validation from others and always wanting to feel accepted by others. And I'm willing to perform and work and work and work. And of course, people that are advantageous, that are predatorial, they'll sit there and they'll be like, all right, give me some more. More. And you end up getting depleted and they drain the life out of you. I remember going through that over and over again, getting involved with people that I thought I loved, right? Because I thought I was capable of loving even my kids. I thought I loved the shit out of my kids. But to be honest, I didn't. How I know that? Because I still chose drugs and gang life and the crimes and all that stuff over being a father. Because I spent 15 years of my kid's life in prison. I got 3 adult children that I wasn't there for. So, yeah, it's nice and it's cool to think that. I mean, and I didn't intentionally not love them. I didn't know what it was. I thought I was doing the best that I could, right? And I was. You know, when you see your kid, you love your kid, you hug your kid, you're like, oh, I love you. But then you put them down or you send them off, you have somebody take care of them so you can go get high, so you can go get drunk, so you go to the bar, so you can go run around with the homies, so you can sell dope, so you can go hit licks, commit crimes, whatever, and then you end up getting locked up, and then you're locked up and you're like, fuck, I miss my kids, right? That was me for many, many years. And it's absurd because the reality is I had every opportunity to be there. But I chose wrong. And so that a lot of that stuff, like I said, was the reason why I hated myself because deep down I knew that I was making bad choices. And I wanted to go back and reverse the tape and start it all over and do it right this time. But that's not going to happen. And what's the point of me harping on myself and holding a grudge against myself for the things that I cannot change? By me thinking that I am not good enough and that I'm worthless and that I will always be this way and I will always be a failure because of my past, it's also going to cause me to do what I did. That's the logical conclusion. Okay, well, fuck it. Just fucking whack yourself then. Right? And I took pleasure because I'm like, I'm getting revenge on my worst enemy. Fuck that dude in the mirror, right? I'm watching myself in the mirror as I'm fucking spewing blood out of my neck. And I kind of felt good about that. But that's not right. No human being should think to do that to themselves, right? That is like the most unnatural thing anyone can do is to deliberately hurt themselves. So what does that reveal? It reveals there's some deep mental issues there, like illness. I was ill. I needed help. And I did receive the help. I received the opportunity to engage in psych services. I received the medication that I needed. I had the support that I needed. I was able to work with a sponsor, go through the steps. If that's what you want to do, that's great. I'm not saying that's what you have to do, but it's what helped me. And also engaging in groups like this and receiving information and thinking about it and doing the paperwork and the homework and the assignments. Little by little, I started understanding that in order for me to get the most out of this life that I have, which is my only chance at life, right? You get this one life, one shot. The only way I'm going to get the best out of it is if I stop being my own worst enemy. If I stop rejecting myself and denying myself of what I truly deserve, which is at least for me to get along with myself. I can't demand no one else to fucking love me. I can't expect anyone else to like me. But I better damn sure fucking accept myself and like myself. Because why the fuck wouldn't I? I'm all I got in this world. Really. And having that understanding, and me finally, and it's not, don't think that it's conceited. It's not being narcissistic. It's not being cocky and overconfident. It doesn't mean you're stuck up or anything like that. If you just finally start to appreciate and value yourself, nothing wrong with that. And some people assume, because even narcissists don't really love themselves. They project confidence that they really don't have. It's a defense mechanism. Deep down inside, they're very insecure and they're very hard on themselves. So what they present on the outside looks like, man, they're so full of themselves. They're stuck up. They think their shit don't stink on. That's not the reality. The reality deep within them is that they're very insecure, very hard on themselves. They don't really love themselves. They're trying to pretend to be something that they're not, just like I did. When you see a person who does love themselves, let me tell you this. A person who truly does love themselves in a genuine way, that person is authentic, that person is humble, that person is compassionate, empathetic, and makes good friendships, good connections, and has healthy relationships with others. And when they love other people, they don't just love hard, they love genuinely. And it comes from an abundance that they possess, not from a place of need or deficiency. And I've experienced that radical transformation in my interactions with other people, whereas before I relied so heavily upon others and their opinions of me, and I was willing to sacrifice myself, just so these guys, don't talk shit about me. So I'm going to go out in the yard and I'm going to pull this thing out of my rectum and I'm going to stab this dude and go to the hole for who knows how long, catch how much more time, doesn't matter. But at least they'll give me a thumbs up at the end of the day, right? That's all I cared about. Fuck my life. Fuck this dude's life. Even though he's my buddy and I know him for a while and he trusts me and that's why he's going to let me get close enough to stab him up, right? Like, all that shit doesn't matter. Fuck my morals, my core values, all that shit's out the window. I just want to make sure these other guys, they still think I'm good. I'm okay. Same thing with relationships. I was willing to go through the drama and the chaos and I mean, having to disarm my ex-wife and trying to get away on my motorcycle while she's behind me trying to run me off the road. And I'm like, fuck yeah, this is love, right? It's passion. Sleeping with one eye open so she doesn't castrate me in my sleep, right? Like, fuck, she really loves me. She wants to cut my genitals off. That's when a woman really loves you. Twisted. I was incapable of having what it was that I was seeking because I didn't start with myself. By relying on other people, I ended up gravitating towards the wrong people that were never going to give me what I needed and were only going to give me more pain. And also kind of influence me and exploit me to make more problems for myself. Like those dudes that I told you about. These guys don't give a fuck. They'll tell you whatever you want to hear. Just go do the dirty work. And there you go. And you're expendable. You're just another pawn, just another fucking torpedo. They don't care. One day you're on their side and they're like, yeah, and the next day you're on the chopping block. I've seen it. And that feeling gave me so much confirmation of me being unworthy. When you're dealing with those kind of people, it kind of reinforces your own belief about yourself that you ain't shit, you'll never be shit, you don't deserve shit. And it sucks, right? It just feeds into that negativity. So yeah, I mean, logically, you end up so desperate that you don't care anymore about yourself. You just want to die. And sometimes people do what I did and try to do it immediately in a brutal, graphic way. And sometimes people just slowly but surely work it out. And I think that's what addiction ultimately is. It's a slow form of suicide. And it definitely is self-harm. Especially when we know we're not in the experimental stages of it. If we've had some time in addiction, we know what it really is. And it's not just fun and games anymore. In the beginning, maybe when we were kids, when we first started off, like, oh, this is great. It's fucking fantastic. I love this shit. But then after a while, you get to see what it really is. And you're like, this ain't cool. And if we get some sober time, why would we go back to that? Why would we go back to something that we know ultimately is going to lead us back to the fucking tent city at the zone, back under a bridge somewhere out there, waving a sign, burgling, or digging in dumpsters to eat, or out there being exploited and taken advantage of and all that stuff, or end up back in jail or back in the hospital or end up dead, or if we're lucky, back in a treatment center. Like, why would we go through that if we truly loved ourselves? And so, again, I want to emphasize, I believe the primary, most powerful solution to anyone's problem, if you're dealing with addiction, is to begin connecting with yourself and loving yourself enough to take care of yourself. It sounds simple, right? It sounds so simple. But I've worked in this field for a few years, and I noticed that it's not that easy. I know it wasn't for me, and the people that I've worked with, it's easier said than done, right? And sometimes it's easier for us to tell somebody else, yeah, I love you, and do something nice for them and care about them, and we have compassion for other people, and we do all this stuff. And like I said, I thought I was giving these people all this love, and I thought they're going to give it back to me, right? It was never going to happen. You can give and give all you want, and you can be like, yeah, I love this person, I love that person. But if you don't love yourself, what you're giving also is not the real McCoy. Because you're thinking in terms of transaction. I had to admit that the reason why I was this way, and I was ready to serve and sacrifice myself and be there and put up with this and put up with that, and why I was doing all this stuff is because I wanted a paycheck at the end of the day. I'm putting in work, I want a reward. And this is how I was programmed, I was conditioned, that's how it works, right? But the only people that actually teach you to do stuff like that are exploitative, predatory, narcissistic people that just want to use you as a source of supply. And I was taught that way early on in life. And so I didn't have any other idea about what love is. I thought it was a transaction. I thought it was, I do this for you, you do this for me. You're gonna get yours, but I'm gonna get mine too, right? And that's how addiction is as well. And so breaking free from that paradigm, recognizing, first of all, you don't have to do anything good for you to like yourself. If you're waiting for yourself to start performing at a certain level and start behaving or achieving goals or getting success in whatever areas you think are important, and then you could be like, okay, now I have a reason to like myself. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Because you're still operating along the same line of thinking as far as transactions. Like, you're only as good as what you can do. And if you're putting that on yourself, watch out. You're going to end up disillusioned again. You're going to end up hanging out with the wrong person, the wrong people, doing the same stuff, and you're still not going to get a return on your investment. And that's going to bring you down. And of course, you're going to look for the best way to cope with it, which is escape reality, numb the emotions, numb the feelings, check out mentally or physically, and not be present anymore. If we begin with just saying to ourselves, look, no matter what, no judgment, no condemnation, not even expectation. Just simply accepting who we are, warts and all, and saying, I need to take care of myself because I'm worth it. And not relying on anyone else, but just to know that it is in us, and we do have the ability and the responsibility to be the number one advocate in our own lives, to be the number one support in our own lives, to be the number one friend, loyal companion, someone that we can trust more than anyone else. It should be us. There was a time I didn't trust myself. And I needed other people to help me, to support me, to kind of give me good advice, to kind of wash out that fucking stinking thinking. But now I'm in a position where I do trust myself. I have no intentions of doing anything bad to myself. If something bad happens to me, hey, I can't stop it. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But am I going to be the one that does it? No. Fuck no. I'm not going to intentionally hurt myself now. I want to fucking live. Not only do I want to live, like, I want to enjoy my life. So I'm going to try to do the best that I can to maximize my experiences now. Not in a false way. Not through synthetic chemicals and fake-ass friends and crazy ass toxic relationships with crazy ass toxic people. No, now I'm really trying to like get long-term results rather than immediate short-term. I've learned to delay gratification rather than just, I need it right now. Got to have it like a bad habit rabbit. Microwave it, drive through, fast food, give it to me now. No, I'm now in a position where I don't like fast food. Fuck that shit. You won't see me in no fucking McDonald's. If it takes time, whatever, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to enjoy my meal because I'm going to prepare it myself. I know what it is. I'm eating whole foods, right? I'm washing the veggies out, right? I'm boiling the water, putting the steamer in there, hooking that shit up. Right? I take my time. I love doing that shit now. But there was a time where I didn't have no patience to wait for something good to come along. I just wanted to have what I could have right away. And just because it feels good doesn't mean that it is good. And things that we get easily are not usually good. And something that we don't really work for, it's rare that you'll value it. Easy come, easy go. So don't expect to automatically love yourself. This is not something that you could just say one day and be like, okay, now I love myself. No, if you haven't been loving yourself, it's going to take time for you to learn how. But I would recommend and suggest that you begin by removing distractions. Begin by challenging your old behaviors and saying, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. I usually like to focus on other things or other people rather than myself. Now, I'm going to just focus on me now. That's a good place to start. And being here, you have that opportunity, but it's up to you because you still are surrounded by other people and there still are plenty of temptations here. But do your best to do what's good for you, and it's not easy. But that's how love works, right? Love isn't always giving the kid what they want. Love is protecting them even from themselves sometimes. My little toddler, she's a little fucking safety hazard, man. And I try to do the best I can to keep her safe. Even if she cries and she don't like it. But I know what's good for her. And I love her. And that's why I don't let her fucking play with electrical cords and shit like that. And, grab dangerous objects and try to, play with. Like, I have to protect her. She doesn't know better. And that's how we have to treat ourselves too. Denying ourselves of our urges and our compulsions or our impulses, it's not a bad thing. In fact, maybe we need to practice that and activate the prefrontal cortex and get out of that emotional response mechanism and start thinking things through and rationalizing with ourselves and be like, yeah, I want to do this. It might feel good, but is it good? In the long run, how's this going to work out? How's this going to play out? And that's what it takes, us to think it through and be like, you know what? Let me just hold off on that. Same thing when we get dysregulated. You get upset. You get, upset. You want to yell. You want to lash out, or you want to do something to change the way you feel right away. But you're in that state of mind where you're not really thinking good, and so you make the wrong decisions. You might say something that you regret, do something that you regret, or just self-sabotage. Say, fuck it, I'm pulling the pin on this one. Just blow up everything, ruin it all. I think it's important to give ourselves time to calm down and learn how to self-soothe, learn how to incorporate these coping mechanisms, the healthy ones, the deep breathing, being mindful, talking to somebody, opening up, being honest, journaling, praying, meditating, all those things. If we learn to do these things and practice these things, guess what happens? We start to build a real tolerance and a resilience that is needed for us to continue on life without going back to that old shit. So hopefully you guys are interested in doing that. I really, really hope that you are. It's worked for me, and if it could work for a guy like me, I don't think anybody's counted out. You can all have this as well. All right, let's take a 15-minute break. Please come back at 10:05.